Hey everyone, we are live for our Sunday weekly warm up. I am so excited to have some friends with us this show specifically because we are having a big old discussion on retaining good staff members. Right now I have Suzanne Daly with me. I'm so excited. You guys, I know her, but I want you to get to know her even better during this discussion. We also might have another friend pop in and join us depending on some tech issues. But either way, we have some great conversation coming. We also, Suzanne and I were just talking off the show, realized that we have a major announcement happening that we didn't tell anybody about. So we're going to for sure spill those beans because I think we kind of messed up not telling you about this big announcement. So we'll be right back. And then we got some stuff to discuss. Hey everyone, my name is Ray Hewart and we are streaming exclusive to our private Facebook group for our Sunday show. I'm so excited that Suzanne Daly is with me. I think she's a familiar face at this point, but hi Suzanne, how are you? Are you ready for the Sunday show?
Ready. The scaries have set in, but I'm ready to undo them a little bit.
I am really excited you're here, not only because of the topic that I know we need to discuss tonight, but also because I really am excited to spill the beans on an announcement that we just discussed. No one realized we didn't tell anybody what's happening. So yippee for us that we get to do it.
Such an exciting night.
It's so good. Suzanne, I truly feel like people that are been in the family for the Teach Better team for a while must know you. But just in case people haven't visited our blog ever in the last 3 years, or just in case somebody hasn't run into you at the Teach Better conference, or just in case somebody hasn't caught you live with us 100 other times, would you share a little bit about yourself?
Oh, thanks, Ray. What a nice introduction. So like Ray said, I'm Suzanne Daly. I'm coming to you from outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I am an instructional coach in 15 elementary buildings. So we had a really great group come to the Teach Better conference this year. Ray and I were just reminiscing, and so the Teach Better family has continued to grow through our school district. And yes, I've been blogging with the Teach Better family for a couple of years now, and it's the Teach Happier blog series that Ray so kindly took a chance on me for.
No, Suzanne, I like to note this every single time we talk, and I'm having deja vu because I know we've done this already, but you were the first blog series. We now have 22 monthly blog series that happen every single month over at teachbetter.com/blogs, but you were the first one, and you truly came to us saying, hey, I have this idea for a blog series. Do you guys do that? And at the time we were like, I don't know. I think we can. And you were the first one. So it's just so cool that you've had this long blog that people can have access to. There's months and months and months of content. And what better topic than how to teach happier? I mean, I know this is your thing, but I'm so glad you grace us with that content every month.
Oh, thank you, Ray. And to say teach happier, it just means being content, aligned, balanced, in a really rational, realistic way, because some seasons in teaching, it's just hard. It's just hard. And we're tired at this time of year. And so we just need a little bit more encouragement to get to that finish line for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Something I really value about the way you approach this topic is very similar to what I hold true to the Teach Better family as well, which is probably why I just love consuming your insight. But it's not a toxic positivity approach. It's not just smile and grit your teeth through it, guys. It'll be fine. Our life is great. But it's truly tactical things we can do to be happier as people and as educators. And in no way are we saying that you should be happy and there's nothing wrong in the world and why are you carrying any stress, but more so, hey, stressors do exist. Reasons to be unhappy exist. But what can we do to kind of fuel ourselves forward? And I really appreciate that honest approach.
Oh, thanks, Ray. Yeah, the term we use a lot in that space is rational optimists, right? We have to be rational. We have to acknowledge when we're in a really great season or we're in a really challenging season, but optimistically understand what are those small shifts in our thoughts, our language, or actions that can help us move through those seasons. And there's a lot of really smart people, neuroscientists and positive psychologists who have studied this. So I try and take all their really smart ideas and make it applicable to us in education.
I love it. So friends, if you've not read that blog series, there's a ton of content over at teachbetter.com in our blog department, but also Suzanne has a book. She's got resources galore. She's got a podcast. I mean, like, truly you can kind of take your avenue, take whatever approach is most comfortable and get started anywhere. And then Suzanne, I know you well enough to know that once they go on this journey, you definitely want them to reach out to you to let you know how it's going. So I hope that they are comfortable enough direct messaging you or getting in contact with you in some way to keep the conversation going.
Oh, thanks, Ray. That would be great.
So good. So I know that there's a few different things we want to accomplish today. So first and foremost, we wanted to do a panel tonight. And we have one member of our community who's having tech issues. So right now it's just Suzanne and I. Throughout the show, we might have a few other people joining us to add to this topic. But either way, one of the key things that we wanted tonight's discussion to be on was retaining strong educators, retaining our leadership teams, and kind of brainstorming how to do that, because a lot of people right now are in our hiring phase and really thinking through what we can do to keep that retention with our staff. The other thing was that Suzanne and I were live, or before we went live, discussing that there is an enormous announcement starting next Sunday on this show. And I don't think we've told anyone. So can we start with that first, Suzanne? Is that okay with you?
Oh, please. Oh, please.
Okay, I am going to say this very carefully, but then we will take questions in the comments if people have them. But as many of you know, we are doing a Teach Better Conference 2023. That's public knowledge. There's no spoilers yet. It's happening October 20th and 21st. So it is just a few months away. I feel like it's like we're coming up on it already. We're like half a year away. And registration is open. Early bird registration is open. You guys have been privy to that information for about a month. That's been open for about a month. And what I really value is like our podcasters row is open. So you can be a podcaster while attending. And there's some like really good perks with that. We opened up sponsorships, and we also opened up our bookstore. So Suzanne, I hope your book will be featured in the Teach Better bookstore, because that will be something that I know a lot of our community will want to pick up conveniently over at the Teach Better Conference 2023. But a very, very anticipated element that people have been dying to know is probably two things. One is, when are proposals opening? And a lot of educators have been messaging me being like, when are proposals opening? I will tell you, that's not till May. So we still have like one more month. If you want to be like super responsible and get all ready for that, then please do. I don't actually know the day it opens, but it will be like the 1st of May or whatever that Monday probably ends up being. That's my prediction of when proposals will be open. So just know you can be ready for that. The other thing is, everyone wants to know the keynotes. Everyone wants to know the featured speakers. Like, this is what people are really, really anticipating. And I will be able to tell you that starting next Sunday, we are doing, I think I can say this, we're doing 5 weeks of keynote and featured speaker announcements. And they will be happening on this show first. And then the rest of the week we'll be celebrating them in a lot of different ways. But that legitimately starts as early as next Sunday. And I can't believe that it's already here to start announcing our keynotes and featured speakers for this event. Isn't that nutty?
It's nutty. But we do want like one hint this week, but it's okay if you're not willing to give it.
Here's my hint, because I think this is interesting, because I was looking at the lineup earlier, because obviously we've been preparing in the background. Like, I'm thinking through all the secrets. I'm like, Ray, don't spill a secret you're not supposed to share yet. But I will say, something kind of fun is that we're not only announcing one speaker each week. So that's my little tidbit, is like, you may come on the show one Sunday and we're announcing one speaker, and you might come to the show like the following Sunday or 2 Sundays from then, and we might be announcing like more than one. And I think that would be really interesting.
Okay. I like it. I like the mystery.
Yeah. I will also say that our featured speakers and keynotes include extremely familiar faces and people that I don't think any of you know. I kind of like the balance of like new and the old. What do you think of that, Suzanne?
I love it. I'm telling you though, it's going to be hard to beat this year's Ray. We're so good.
I know, but did we say that in 2019 too? I mean, come on.
We did say it, but we're saying it again, louder.
I'm so excited. I think that, and I know this is like a very big statement to say, I think that this year will be better. I know that that's like really, really big, but so the first few years, we do a combination of like essentially 2 guest keynotes and then a spackling of featured speakers early on in the process. As many of you probably remember, in the first round, we had Dave Burgess and Adam Welcome, and then like phenomenal educators supporting that crew. In this most recent one, we had Mickey Smith Jr. and Janine Letford, and then we had like a spattering of others. I think that year 3 of the Teach Better Conference is actually going to be the perfect combination of like excitement and just great things. So we'll see. We'll see.
We're so excited. And everybody in the comments they're going crazy too. This is good. We're excited.
So good. So good. I will say, I hope that you guys all write in your calendars to kind of transition here. Be here next Sunday because we will have one keynote announced next Sunday. And I want to make sure that you guys don't miss that information. As you think through that and also throw it on your calendar, Suzanne and I are going to be right back and we are going to get into our panel discussion, which I know is funny because it's just the 2 of us right now. But I do want to make sure we focus on a very, very special topic that has also been a theme in Admin Mastermind this month. And we'll be right back for that conversation. Hey friends, we are back live for our Sunday weekly warm-up where we are discussing a very, very special topic this month that has not only been a topic within our private Facebook group where there's been questions, but also a theme for our Admin Mastermind. Suzanne Daly is with us and we are going to get into the discussion around retaining our staff. So Suzanne, I know that your roles in education have evolved over time. But tell me a little bit about your experience thinking through how to retain staff leaders or teachers.
Yeah, so in my role as an instructional coach, I get to teach every day to at least one classroom. And so I feel every day, the boots on the ground, that things that worked for us 5 years ago, 7 years ago, like aren't working anymore. And that can be really tiring and it can be really frustrating. And there absolutely could feel like a level of burnout after some time, right? I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So I start thinking about like, well, what do really smart researchers say? And they say that 100% of happy people, meaning content, aligned, balanced, have the same thing in common, and that's strong social relationships. And so I think about the people I work with who I spend an extraordinary amount of time with, right? We spend so much time with the people we work with. And I think, who are my green flag people, right? Who are the people who are good to me? They are good for me. That's who I need to expend my limited amount of energy and time with. And those are the relationships that are going to be there to listen to me when things are really hard. And they're going to believe me and listen. Those are the groups that are going to celebrate alongside me when things are going well. But knowing who your people are, I think, is of utmost importance for us to have that really strong adult connection, because especially elementary educators, I mean, we're around kids all day long, which is usually lovely and magical, but it's also really isolating at times. And so how are we nurturing those really important collegial relationships, I think, is of utmost importance.
Yeah, so let's dive into that a little bit further. And actually, I want to encourage anybody in the comments, feel free to add your thoughts and add your additional questions or discussions within the comments. That's why we love to stream exclusive in our group, is that we're all right here. So any comments that you make, other people in our community can see and learn and engage with you. Suzanne, something I really want to focus on for this is whether we're talking about retaining teachers or retaining leaders, you're really talking about people holistically as human beings. And I think that is a really, really good spot to start. It's not about pulling tricks out of a hat to keep a teacher in a role, but how do we really see people for who they are? And what do we know about being humans that we can continue to foster? One element you're talking about here is having good relationships with colleagues. And that goes with any role. How can we, if we can almost like in this dialogue, pretend we have control over some of these things, even though some of us might feel like that's not our job. How can we foster that building of relationships between people that we work alongside? Because I think you hit the nail on the head on the end there, that our jobs can be isolating. So when we have time where maybe it doesn't have to be isolating, I think sometimes forced collaboration doesn't always work either. So what are your thoughts on fostering those relationships to build on themselves?
Well, I think about, if I had to boil it down to one sentence, it would be seeing the person behind their role, right? So I need to see the person behind my grade level partner. I need to see the human behind the principal role, the instructional aide, our secretary, custodian, all those important roles. We have to see the person behind that, because once we start labeling folks, which in a school ecosystem we just naturally have to do, then things become a little more mechanical or automatic or systematic, when it really needs to be human. And our work is so human that we have to honor that with the adults we work alongside as well.
But I really appreciate that overarching mentality, because then you can pull in different activities or opportunities for people to get to know truly the humans. You're not necessarily putting people together to say, okay, let's work on curriculum work, because then you may not get into the human experience. So one of the things I'm thinking of, Suzanne, is we did, I think this was an activity that Katie Miglin came up with, because I don't know, she's great at those like weirdo games. But at the Teach Better retreat, which we did internally for our team back in July, one of the activities I vividly remember is we each got 3 slips of paper and we had to write a fun fact on the slip of paper, but it was like 2 truths and a lie. So you had to then read them and guess which was the false statement, or guess whose statements matched with who. And what I really liked, it was fun to be like, I, dye my hair brown, and you're like, okay, who does that fit? And then you could guess and see if it was like correct or wrong. And I think that's how you can get to know, it's like a silly activity, but you can get to know the people in the room, because some of the people on the Teach Better team had like crazy fun facts about themselves, but like we had no idea. And there was no real opportunity for those things to come up unless these strange activities were presented to us. Does that make sense?
It does. And I must say, I was very jealous seeing those pictures of that retreat, because it looks so fun.
It was so fun.
But you know what I often do, Ray? And I talked about this in a podcast a couple episodes ago. Whoever it is, right? It could be a parent, it could be a colleague, it could be an administrator. I just say like, hey, good morning. Tell me something good. Mm-hmm. And then you'll get, sometimes people have to pause and be like, what is good right now? Yeah. But then you'll find just a little glimmer of either something that's going well professionally or personally, that you can almost find some kind of commonality. And, the slips of paper, the 2 truths and a lie, that's so fun, but a little bit more organic thing to do just in any hallway or classroom would just to ask someone to tell you something good and see what they say.
Well, and that's kind of the blessing that we have here, is that everything, as we get into this discussion of retaining our staff, retaining our leadership, is not going to be a one and done activity, right? It's going to be how can we embed this into the day-to-day? How can we create a strong focus with activities and kind of everything in between? We're going to pause here and take a quick break to welcome in a nice, new, friendly face to our discussion, and we'll be right back. Hey everyone, we have Trey Gamage joining the conversation here, in addition to our conversation with Suzanne Daly. Trey, how you doing?
Listen, I'm doing well. I'm prepared to keep things rolling. I got a new baby on the way, getting some time together, so I'm glad to join y'all today. Thanks for having me.
We're so glad you're here, Trey. I knew that you and Suzanne would just be like this power team as we dive into this discussion around retaining staff. And you haven't missed too much. We had some fun discussion early on in our show. And then we did just get into this conversation around ideas to retain staff. And one of Suzanne's observations right off the bat has just been really looking at whether you're a teacher trying to build relationships with teachers, or leaders trying to build relationships with other leaders, that relationships really help that retention, and really getting to know the human level beyond the title as a focus. Anything you want to jump in and add to that discussion?
Well, for sure, Ray and Suzanne, I think that's the crux of it, right? I remember when I was in college and I was studying psychology, one statement that really stood out to me was a person first approach to language. A person is not schizophrenic or bipolar; they have these disorders, and you are not. I guess you are a teacher, but you're a person first. You know what I'm saying? You're an educator, but you're a person first. And so when I'm having training sessions or when we're introducing folks, get to know the person before you get to know the teacher. And that way, when things get tough and you really rubber meets the road, you actually know who the person is and not just the teacher, because those things don't always align. And when you get, deep in the trenches, you start to be a little bit more of yourself if your needs aren't being met at school.
It's interesting. I expected, and maybe this is foolishly, I expected to bring this conversation as okay, team, how are we going to retain teachers? And then let's stop. Okay, how are we going to retain leaders? But hearing both of your notes here, I'm not sure that it really has a different strategy, whether we're talking about the need to retain our leadership teams, because principals are leaving at an exorbitant high percentage. But then I think it's going to be a very similar approach as we talk about needing to retain our teachers, who are also in a very different way changing their role in this profession. Mm-hmm. So what are your initial thoughts on that maybe misinterpretation on my end?
I'll let Suzanne go first here.
Oh, I don't think it's much of a misinterpretation. I just think it's a different perspective of looking at it. I mean, if we think about it, Megan said she loved the idea of like green flag people. We know who the red flags are, right? We know who drains us. We know when we walk away from a conversation, like, ooh, like that doesn't feel right. So can we think of the flip of that? When we walk away from some interaction, do we feel energized? Do we feel like we were almost just in like a charging station of some sort, right? Mm-hmm. Those are our green flag people. And when we have an ecosystem of green flag people being good to each other, listening to each other, asking thoughtful, real questions, and again, seeing the person behind the title, that's a place we all would want to work. That's where we would want to stay. And that's where we would want to strengthen and improve that system for sure. I read something, this was a long time ago, but it was like trees, they have this like underground root system that so if the three of us are trees, but like Trey's, he's flourishing, obviously, but then there's you and I, Ray, we aren't doing so well. Like Trey's root system would give us some things, right? Like there's this whole underground circulatory system, which is just such a beautiful metaphor for what our schools could be if they are handled in a really healthy way.
Yeah, well said. There's Robert Breyer, who I believe is on the Teach Better podcast network as well. I interviewed him several years ago, and our podcast topic was about the trickle-down effect. And he talked about, from a leadership standpoint, how your communication skills, your leadership values, your bias, if the leader is showing up to school with the attitude, that's going to trickle down. If the leader's going to show up to school, gung-ho and excited about the day, you're going to have, some other roots of the tree that are going to be going the same way. And so, you see that with organizations, a lot of the schools that I'm working with, and we use assessments, communication style assessments, and we worked with over 18 schools, 20 schools. And what you typically see is there's typically one leader that has a D style or a dominant, more assertive communication style, and that's usually the principal. And then you'll notice strengths with the teacher. One of the strengths that typically stands out is that they're willing to follow a leader with a cause. And so schools that are positive, schools that are productive, have a leader who is igniting the charge. They're an assertive communicator. They're the decision maker, not afraid to ruffle feathers, but you've also got a team of outgoing folks, some analytical folks, some consistency folks to keep folks on the same page, and everybody's willing to move forward in that same direction. And so it's been cool to see some of that research firsthand myself. I'm like, oh, wow, here's some correlations for, a positive school culture or a positive school climate versus the other way around.
It's interesting for me reflecting during your suggestions here. I think it's very easy for us to identify the teachers that we've talked to that are exceptionally burned out. They have 1,000 reasons why this year has been, really, truly difficult for them. And those are the teachers I think I initially think of when I'm like, how do we retain teachers, right? Like, I almost feel like the solution might be that we need to give them like 7 weeks of paid vacation for them to like go on an island and sit in a bikini and drink margaritas and reset. But it's interesting as you're speaking here, I have a very, very close colleague who just recently took a new job this past year, started a new position at a new elementary school. And it's been fine. Like she had a good year this year. It's March. She thinks her kids are okay. And, you know, the staff's okay and everything's fine. But it was interesting because one of the positions in her grade level this year was being eliminated. And she kind of came to me and was like, I think I'm good. I think I'm going to change positions. And I'm like, well, why? You know, like, is your specific position being cut? You know, what's making you change? And I think it's interesting because she truly wanted to change because she was indifferent. She's like, I don't necessarily feel like this school community became my family. I haven't really made any good friends and I don't mind staying, but I also don't mind leaving. Right. And I think that that's another element of retention that we're looking at here is not just the teacher that is angry about their situation, but also the teacher that doesn't feel like there's a reason to stay, right? What are your thoughts on that, Trey? I see you thinking.
I agree. And I think going back, I think about, you know, beginning with the end in mind. And I've been fortunate to have more of a business mind in education. You know, I came in kind of as an entrepreneur and worked with several charter schools or non-traditional schools. So there was always an entrepreneurial mindset. And so even to your point, Ray, I think about onboarding. And what's my first day like on the job? Do I have my email passwords? Do I know all my curriculums? Do I have my logins? Do I have access to everything? These are things that build rapport up front. These are things that build community up front. In my meeting, do I know all my administrators or all my leaders? I know some schools are much bigger, sure. You know, and maybe it's not every administrator, but your direct line of supervisors. Those types of things up front give you the relationship to go back and connect and say, hey, you know, I like it here, but I don't really feel connected. Or you might not have that thought anyway if you've got an effective, you know, 30-day onboarding. Which is that realistic? Honestly, I don't know. You know, in education today, I don't know if that's realistic to as much turnover as we have. I know some folks start second quarter, third quarter, and then it's hard to get caught up in the mode. But if we have an intentional checklist of, hey, we're hiring somebody, let's help them feel welcome. Let me make sure the computer already has the password. Let me make sure I already got a list of logins. Here's a schedule of your trainings. Here's a schedule of your meetings. Like, help me out these first couple of weeks. Make it easy for me to get involved in this new community. And that's more of a business mind that I think is not necessarily translated all the time.
Well, I think it's a great note. And Suzanne, I'm going to come to you next. I really value the fact that there's not only an onboarding checklist, but it's an onboarding checklist with some human checklist items as well. It's not just, I got to get them their key, but how can I make sure that there is a relationship element to the things on my checklist that either is me reassuring them that I got their back or me connecting them with some sort of mentor or supportive colleague so that they can make sure that they have someone to confide in if I'm not available or accessible. Suzanne, what are your thoughts on that kind of onboarding mentality?
Well, what Trey just said is exactly why we're making a really big change in our district in terms of new teacher induction. So year one, I mean, when I tell you we like handhold them, we cradle them, we welcome, we love, we support. And then overwhelmingly people say, my worst year in teaching was my second year. And we're like, well, why? And they said, well, because all the support just fell off. And so, you know, just taking your 30-day onboarding and just making it a little bit bigger for your first year. Now what we're doing starting this, you know, coming school year will be to really continue that systematic, predictable support system in year 2 and beyond. I mean, we would level off a little bit, but to make sure that we're really conscious of still continuing that support, just as you were saying, Trey. Yeah.
Well, and doing that reflection of when a mentorship program is something to lean in on, because one of the biggest hurdles I've seen in a mentorship program is first, Suzanne, what you noted, the fact that it's very short and it dissipates very quickly. but also the approach that sometimes a new teacher in a building is going through a very similar transition as a teacher who just simply stays in the building but moves grade levels, or like, because that in and of itself could have an opportunity for some sort of different support or mentoring program, or a teacher that changes different teams in a middle school environment, or a teacher that changes different departments. These are all new starts that very frequently don't have any sort of onboarding because it's assumed, well, you've been around for a while, so you must know what you're doing. Not to say we don't, but it's just a very different support that's needed.
Yeah.
And Ray, I'll take that one step further. I also think it's someone who's in the same grade level or the same classroom, but they've just had a new baby, or they're going through a divorce, or they're caring for an aging parent. Like, that's the kind of stuff too that will undoubtedly impact their energy, their happiness, their commitment, to their job. And that's got to be taken into consideration as well. That takes knowing the person. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is good stuff. And, I think there's so many components that we've got to consider when we're onboarding folks and the type of induction program that they have. I remember Cheryl McCray, podcasting is helpful because you get to interview experts, all over. I met a woman in Tennessee, and their induction program is actually 3 years long. So it's for teachers year 1 through year 3. And then they have assigned them up with mentees as well. So obviously you got to have the capacity and the structure to be able to roll these types of things out. And then I feel like stepping away from the classroom over the last year, you hear about how many decisions educators have to make a day. And so I think something that would be really helpful for capacity, how many objective decisions or how many subjective decisions can we remove from your plate on a day and or a given time, and making your job more objective, where you don't have to think about, oh, how do I log in? What time am I supposed to be there? What time do I need to finish class or my lesson plan? You could just show up and teach as your best self. And again, I've been in situations on both sides where, you give a staff a curriculum and they don't follow the curriculum that's mapped out, but then you might not give them a curriculum because they want to do it their own, and then they're not completing lesson plans. And I'm saying they're generalizing, but I'm generalizing, but the systematic approach, I think, is the most important piece. How are we rolling these pieces out? What are our checks and balances? And those things just take time to figure out as well.
I would just like to do a shameless plug that Trey's podcast is available at the Podcast Network as well under the Teach Better team. So if any of you guys are looking for content, these two are putting an obscene amount of content over at teachbetter.com in a lot of different areas. We were just talking about Suzanne's commitment to sharing her voice earlier in the show, Trey. So it's just so funny to always be able to find little pockets where you can learn and just continue to consume. I would like to go back to a focus that we had early on that I think is a good element for this specific discussion, because retention is important in this relationship of how can we onboard educators. I think this is something that we can reflect on now. We can implement it in July and August. This is actually a really positive, forward-thinking conversation. Another element, though, that was brought up that could be something we start putting in place as soon as tomorrow, if we're interested, is this discussion along creating a concept or idea that's then folded within the day-to-day responsibilities of educators and leaders, but then also something that you specifically design activities for. And one of the things that we had examples for earlier on was the activity of getting to know the human nature of people. So not just on a staff institute day, doing a specific activity where people get to share about their personal lives, but also Suzanne had a great example of simply walking up to somebody in the morning and saying, hey, what's good in your life? And that again, reinforces that human element. Yeah. So where else can we take that conversation that maybe we can all choose to actively get in a habit of infusing this type of work into our day-to-day to help with retention?
Right. I think that's a perfect example. It's okay to schedule stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like your daily goals, hey, give 3 compliments today. Stop by every classroom. I was a dean of students at we only had 1 grade level, K through 12, but I would make it a point if I may have gotten pulled to be in 3rd grade, but in the hour when I wasn't in 3rd grade, I made it a point to go to every classroom on campus just to show my face. I'm the dean of students. So little goals like that, give 3 compliments, visit 4 classrooms, give two teachers a break. That stuff doesn't take any strategy. It just takes intention. And if you can be intentional about it from the top down, and even peer to peer, you're I think I've done some videos for Teach Better or SEL for PLCs, but just simply checking in, and the fact that SEL is something we practice every day. Every time you check in with that teacher next door, or you ask somebody how they're doing, you're practicing SEL, but you can do it on purpose by scheduling those things. Or that teacher, oh, you know what? How is Miss So-and-so doing? I'm gonna give her a sticky note today, thinking of you. Those things are so basic, but they make such a big difference and take minimal effort, just intention.
I like that scheduling. Suzanne, I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this. I had a student teacher one time who was exceptional. Like, she's still teaching now, and I'm sure changing lives on a ridiculous basis. But she was very focused on like wanting to do exactly what she had planned. And she wasn't always good at kind of ad-libbing when those funny things happened in the classroom. So we had this system that for a week, periodically, I'd randomly hand her a Post-it, and the Post-it would have some sort of challenge on it that she'd have to do within 40 minutes of when she was handed the Post-it. So little things like sharing 3 compliments, or trying to get a student to say a certain vocabulary word, or making a certain joke where you could get the whole class to laugh. Kind of those things that I feel like if I had a Post-it in my hand being like, hey, this is your goal for today, like give 3 compliments, or this is your goal for today, visit all classrooms. It allows us to do that scheduled human work. Suzanne, what are your thoughts on that?
And it sounds so counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like scheduled human work. But that's the only way this gets done, to treat it consistently, almost to treat it like a discipline. I was telling you earlier, Ray, so I'm in 15 elementary buildings. And so that equates to almost 600 colleagues. Like, that's a lot of people, right? But I have to build connections with all of those people. So I got my reminders app, and on there, when I'm leaving a school, I jot down something, whether someone was having a hard day, or like Trey, like if I went by your room and you just told me that you were expecting your first baby, that's getting written down on my reminders. Then I'm going to follow up with an email a couple days ago or later, or pop a little Post-it in your mailbox. Just these small things that to Trey's point, it does not take a long time at all, but it takes consistent, intentional effort. But that's the most important place I think our efforts can go, with our students and with our colleagues.
We think routines and habits sound like bad words when you hear them up front. Nobody wants a routine, nobody wants habits, and nobody wants to budget. But it's not restricting. It doesn't have to be restricting. I schedule family time. Personally, like 6 to 7:30 a.m. is family time. 5 to 8 p.m. is family time. That's like designated time that I put in my calendar daily to make sure I mark that out, and it's just a priority for me. And so if I'm marking out through my day, what are my intentions, what are my goals, it changes. As a man thinketh, as a woman thinketh, so shall he or she become. So it's practicing those things like that. And I think I'm glad that we talked about this too, because I think there's a big difference between and they work together, but intention and systems. So you've got to take a systematic approach to implementation. And that means it's going to take about 3 to 5 years, 3 years at a school level, 5 years at a district level. So if you're serious about, the culture, climate type of thing, the onboarding, it's just going to take that time to work out the kinks. But while you're building the system, you can still be intentional about how you're practicing building that system.
I feel like there are so many great elements for our family here to implement, or challenge colleagues to hold yourself accountable to implement. I will say, as you guys were speaking about the note, that, Suzanne, of you taking notes when you talk to people, I know this is the lamest comparison ever, but I went to get my haircut the other day. This is the lamest thing. If you saw on Instagram, I got my haircut, and she must do that, because I go months and months and months not seeing her. And yet when I show up, I sit down, she, puts the whatever cape over me, and she goes, so how's Harvey doing? I know he wasn't feeling well last time you were here. I think you thought he needed surgery, my dog. And I'm like, I don't know why, but it means so much that I know that you know that I have a dog, and I can talk about it if I want to. It's just, it really does kind of reach such a deeper layer when you're with somebody who took any sort of intention to remember anything about you, even if it's small. And so I love that opportunity that we have here to either write those notes and bring it up a few days later or a few months later, not putting too much pressure on ourselves to take on more. But Trey, as you were sharing, really finding a system that we can scale that allows us to really create those opportunities that we know are good without adding to our plate.
Yeah.
So really powerful here.
Yeah. My third component, so we got intention, systems, and then I would say documentation. And that's great. Y'all, everybody at Teach Better always gets me going to another level. So the documentation, if you don't have a full system, if you're not following a guide, you can still document your processes. And just as a school leader, if I want to take on this task of being more supportive to my team, I can just start documenting my process and recognizing, hey, you know what? 5 compliments a day is too many. 4 classrooms a day is not enough. Well, what if I start I made 3 today, I gave 4 compliments today. What if I assign my principals a grade level? So I'll compliment 12th, they do 11th, they do 10th, and then you keep changing it. Okay, that's I like to touch everybody. So maybe we don't do grade levels, maybe we just do 5 people still. But you're just thinking of it and iterating it over time through documentation rather than trying to think up how these things are going to work on the top of your head.
Well, I think that's a perfect reminder to all of us that as we're creating these systems, trying these components out, even the ones we've discussed today or ones we weren't even able to discuss yet, and that you'll find other avenues in our lives, knowing that you can adjust. When you create a system, if it's not working for you, give yourself the grace to say, okay, I need to change it. Not, I'm going to get rid of it and screw this idea. We don't even need it anymore. But the idea is good, but we need to find the system that works most effectively for you to get what you need out of the experience. So this has been a really, really valuable conversation here about retaining our people, our teachers, our leaders. And I know that you both have resources specific to retention, but also just specific to supporting human beings that work in our school environment. So I'd love to go to each of you. If you don't mind, Suzanne, I'm going to start with you, just sharing how people can stay in contact with you and get in contact with the content you're sharing out, because I know you do it on a very frequent basis. So Suzanne, do you mind starting?
Yeah, so everything's housed on SuzanneDailey.com, but it's the Teach Better blog, which is the Teach Happier blog, and then the Teach Happier podcast, which is released every Sunday night. It's about 5 minutes long, and it's just a real small intentional shift in our thoughts, language, or actions to get us into, I like to say, to get into the healthiest headspace and heart space for your upcoming week, whatever our important role is in education. And then like Ray said, the book, which it's hard to point when it's backwards, there she is, the book called Teach Happier this school year just came out as well. So lots of opportunities for us to connect, and it's just a really great group of rational optimists that just continue to grow and grow. So thanks for letting me share that, Ray.
So good. Trey, do you mind also sharing where our community here can stay connected to you? I know there's like 1,000 different mediums, but start us off.
I'm trying to slim things down. So
there's no way, because I could even list it. I could be like, okay, so you can find Trey on this page of teachbetter.com and this page of teachbetter.com and this.
The best way, I try to just make it so you can Google. My name is different. People usually can't say my name correctly. It's like damage with the G. But if you Google it, that means nobody else comes up. So if you just type in Trey Gamage, my personal website, TreyGamage.com, and social media accounts will come up. And then our company website, SEL Educators, got some great updates coming with some things for like individual teachers, but also our packages for staff around professional development and consulting. So Teach Better blog, Teach Better podcast, Teach Better speaker network, all those things if you're on the Teach Better team.
I know, I'm like, obviously Trey's on our speakers network, but I will just tell you, these 2 educators, I would absolutely put my name on. They need to come to your school. If you're listening now, if you're catching this live, great. Or if you're catching it afterwards on the Teach Better Talk podcast, just know that if you're looking for the right people to come to your school, I have no idea what schedule Trey and Suzanne have right now, but book them anyway and just beg for them to come. And if they give you a hard time, call me and I'll bombard them too. But they're good people to bring in, whether it's to work with your full staff or just hang out with your leadership team and create more strategic plans. So lots of good stuff here, guys. Thank you so much for coming live and having some great discussion. Appreciate the both of you.
And thanks to everybody who joined tonight.
Yeah, see you soon, friends. Don't forget that we will have obviously Wednesday Wake Up this week, but we also maybe more importantly, have a major announcement coming every single Sunday starting tomorrow for the Teach Better Conference for the next 5 weeks. So don't miss it. See you later, friends.